For professional advice with a personal touch, consult Fuller Landau, Chartered Professional Accountants and Business Advisors. Click on flmontreal.com.
7:06 on CJAD 800. Welcome to today's Entrepreneur, a program about the entrepreneurial spirit that drives Quebec business. My name is Dan Delmar, along with Fuller Landau's Josh Miller. Hello, Josh.
Hello.
How are you this week?
I am excellent.
Great. And on the program this week, we're going to talk food with Kim Lalouse from Prêt, Manger, Miss Prêt, Manger, and she'll be coming up shortly on the program. But first, as usual, perhaps we'll take some time to take a look at some of the entrepreneurial items in the news this week. And should we begin with perhaps some news about Netflix?
Netflix, they're expanding. You know, we hear a lot of entrepreneurs expand beyond the borders of Canada. Netflix, as we know, I mean, it's in so many areas, but now they're moving to the islands. I think it's Cuba or somewhere in the Caribbean. And but I guess the story here is you really got to know your market when you're going elsewhere. I mean, Netflix operates on monthly buys. You know, you submit your credit card or your debit card or whatever you're going to do, and they just kind of automatic withdrawal every month. Well, in Cuba or in perhaps some areas of the world that are a little more suspect, perhaps credit cards aren't so above board. So they really have to know the market, and they have to prepare themselves and make sure that whatever credit cards they get given for the local population actually goes through. Otherwise, they're going to be losing a lot of money.
For local entrepreneurs, have you ever seen just entire new markets open up because of lifting sanctions, stuff like that? Do you have any advice for people looking maybe to get into business in Cuba?
Oh, the business in Cuba. Well, at least we're not in the United States. Otherwise, that would be a difficult topic. But Cuba, listen, if there's a market there, there's certainly a lot of tourism. I don't know much about the Cuban market other than, you know, they have some really good cigars and some beautiful beaches. Food not so good, but we're going to fix that here when we talk with Kim later. But bottom line is, anytime you're venturing out into an external or a foreign market, you got to do your homework, and the best advice I can give is find the right local partner, because the local partner, the local person on the ground, is the one that's going to know all the ins and outs. You can have all the rules and regulations and laws you want, but if you don't know how to work it on the ground, you're dead.
Let's get into another story that's kind of interesting. Who would have thought that the Canada Revenue Agency would be making mistakes? That never happens. But there's quite a few mistakes, according to the CBC. And a survey found that a lot of its call center workers are giving bad advice to people. How do you know that what Canada Revenue Canada tells you is really what you should be doing with your taxes? You
know, the reality is that the general, Joe and Jane taxpayer that is not sure of the rule and don't have their own professional accountant, to pay the really smart dollars that they should pay to their accountant, not self-serving, they call up the government, and the government is supposed to be very forthcoming and be very knowledgeable about all the laws in place, what they can use and what they can take advantage of. Now, there are certainly different stats out there, but the latest one that I read that you're referring to says that 1/4 of all information and answers given to the taxpayers that call up CRA, that call up Revenue Canada, are incorrect. Now, that may not seem like a lot to some, but it's quite a big difference. Now, what are they answering or what are they not answering properly? There's a multitude of questions, but as a Canadian taxpayer paying tax dollars, if you can't get the right answer on the phone when you're calling, there's something wrong. Now, I understand CRA, Canadian government, is trying to fix it all and trying to educate people, although they might have to just do something a little bit better, a little bit faster.
Interesting piece in the Gazette in the past week about the evolution of retail, and they profile a futurist named Doug Stevens, who's in Montreal to give a talk about the future of retail. What do you see as the future of retail? We saw one kind of cool evolution, the sort of, what was it, Amazon, I think, where they're going to have these virtual display where you could sort of try on the clothes virtually without trying them on.
I think the future of retail is quite varied, and I think it really depends on what sector you're in. You see a lot of, we've had discussions about online versus bricks and mortar stores, and conclusively they both came up with, both are important. You can create an online brand, but will it really become something if you don't have a physical location where people can go and touch and do? If Gucci or Louis Vuitton were only online, you couldn't go to an actual store, would they be the brands that they are today? I'm not so sure. So what is the future? The future is, there's no question, there's going to be a combination of physical presence and technology all rolled up into one. I'll add to that. It's not the product itself that's going to drive people to their stores. It's going to be, why are they going? Why should they do business with this company? Why do people buy Apple? They buy Apple because Apple makes this phenomenal product. They want to simplify individuals' lives. You can get a smartphone anywhere. Why go to Apple? Because they did it right, and they taught the people that they make the product, but they do it because they believe that it's the right, best way to go for the individual.
Here's a quote from the Gazette, Douglas Stevens, so-called retail prophet, and he says that media in all of its forms, whether on an ad or mobile device or on a TV screen, is coming alive with technology and actually becoming direct portals to purchase. So that's interesting. Is the evolution now that you can buy stuff directly in the ad?
As I said before, technology is going to meet physical presence. You are definitely going to be able, you can already buy stuff, the ads on the side of the screen and the banner ads or whatever you call them. I'm not the techie, but there are certain products that you actually want to go feel and touch and do. And some of them are price point issues, and some of them are just, I really like that couch, but do I need to go look at it and feel it and sit on it to know if it's going to be the right buy for me? Absolutely. Once you've investigated, you might go online to make sure all the specifications are okay and measure and price it, but there's still a place for everything. The future is, as far as I'm concerned, at least the foreseeable future, a combination of technology and physical presence.
And speaking of retail, yet another one bites the dust. Parasuco is going to close their stores, laying off its staff. They're going to go online. 7 stores in Canada, including, of course, a flagship store here in Montreal. Wow, tough times for clothing retailers in town.
There's no question about it. And Parasuco, I don't know how many people were in the know, but from the few people or the number of people that I've spoken to, last Friday, it was a bit of a shock. They didn't realize that they were absolutely closing their doors. It kind of happened all at once. I'm looking at Kim going, no way, I can't believe they closed. But it's absolutely wild. And is it a sign of the times that are out there? There's no question there are things that are happening. There are, behind the scenes, there are nervous banks out there. Sometimes, right now, retailers, this is a very quiet time of the year. Do banks get overly anxious and overly nervous this time of year? Are owners forced to pull the plug prematurely because they don't have the support from their financiers? There's a lot of factors at play here. Now, Parasuco, they understand a little bit because they might have closed their retail stores, but their online is still open. You can still buy online. Maybe there'll be distributors a little bit more. So there's certainly ways around it. And as we said before, as we keep saying with retail, it's the right mix of technology and physical presence.
Parasuco, Mex, Jacob, I think. The list goes on and on. Are we going to get to the point where downtown you think will be just free of clothing retailers?
No, it'll never be free of clothing retailers. We all have to kind of dress ourselves. Not everybody, looks like, you and our guests with those svelte figures. We're on radio, but everybody, will always want to look good. Will always want to feel good. You're always going to have retailers. You're always going to have clothing retailers. People are going to want to shop for clothes. They're going to want to buy presents for their spouses or their kids. You're going to have it. The question is, are there going to be as many? And what are the choices, and why are people going to go into those stores?
Today's Entrepreneur on CJAD will begin a profile with Kimberly Luz of Miss Prêt, Manger after the break at 7:15.
For professional advice with a personal touch, consult Fuller Landau, Chartered Professional Accountants and Business Advisors. Click on flmontreal.com.
7:19 on today's Entrepreneur, inspiring stories from outstanding business people. Dan Delmar and Fuller Landau's Josh Miller with you. And let's introduce our guest, Kimberly Luz of Miss Prêt, Manger. Welcome, Kimberly.
Thank you,
so,
Josh.
the easiest question of the evening is the first one is tell me about yourself and about Miss Prêt, Manger. I guess you are Miss Prêt, Manger.
I guess I could be, yes. Miss Prêt à Manger is a multitude of things, but in essence, it's a local catering company that believes in conscious cooking. So we think about that all the way from purchasing to production and selling back to the client. So we have eco-wise containers. We only work with ocean-wise fish. We try to stick to local and organic as much as possible. throughout the 4 seasons of the year. So.
Now, where did this start? Where was your history? What was your background? And what propelled you into this?
It started when I was 4 in the basement of my parents' house with a line of Easy Bake ovens. It was like my favorite thing. I just wanted to cook for other people and feed other people. And I pretty much shied away from it for almost all my life. I always had one foot in the restaurant industry, so that, by ways of being a waitress or a bartender, manager, what have you, while I stayed in school. Then jumped into a career in fashion, which I thought was really fun and entertaining and inspiring and difficult and challenging and all those things. But, came full circle, I guess you can say, and decided at 28 to, jump in with 2 feet to the one industry that I love the most, which is food.
Now, you worked in restaurants, you worked with food all your life. You weren't shied away from the fact that, it's a tough business and I can't believe all that can go wrong.
I put it this way, I totally traded in my high heels and, carry on for a hairnet and a kitchen apron. Like, it's not a glamorous industry, especially not the way that I decided to go about it, which was build it from scratch at a pace that I could handle. One of my favorite terms is organic growth, because it's kind of like a double meaning in my business. But I really do feel that this business, this little place that I've created, really grew in a very organic way. So I just bit off what I could chew as I went along, and started off as the chef and the server, the dishwasher, the purchaser, the everything, and then as we grew, we just got more and more employees.
Now, before you went into this, before you jumped in 2 feet, did you have a specific plan in mind? Were you thinking 2, 3, 5 years out, or were you thinking, no, let me get through this day or week or month and then move on from the next?
Full disclosure, I guess.
Absolutely.
You guys like the good, the bad, and the ugly on the show, I've heard. So I guess, at the time, I was in a really bad place financially for whatever reason. I had a bad ending to my run in fashion, and I can't tell you the motivation that you can find behind that. When you find yourself, in your 20s, definitely driven, focused, ready to get out there, you learn quickly that nobody's going to hand it to you. You definitely have to make it for yourself, regardless of your family or your history or whatever. And that propelled me into where I am today, which, again, in the way I see it, is it's a little bleep on the map still, but I try my very best, and so do all the people that I'm lucky to work with, to give it everything that we have, passion and whatnot. So, yeah.
And Dan, we don't hear too often about entrepreneurs starting off taking small bites. We hear a lot, I have this idea, I want to jump out, I'm going to go whole hog. Here we take a little bit of small bites at a time, no pun intended, with the delicious food that she's brought, by the way.
Yeah.
And when we come back, we'll talk a little bit more about the progression behind Miss Prêt, Manger, and of course, what's beyond that.
Kimberly Lalouse of Miss Prêt, Manger, our guest this evening on Today's Entrepreneur.
For professional advice with a personal touch, consult Fuller Landau, Chartered Professional Accountants and Business Advisors. Click on flmontreal.com.
$7:25. Welcome back to Today's Entrepreneur. Our guest this evening is Kimberly Lalouse, Miss Prêt à Manger. And so tell us about why you wanted to get into food, maybe. What was what made you want to make the switch from passion to food?
Again, just this utter need to feed people around me. I don't know what it is, but I think it's definitely growing up with the family that I grew up with. I mean, my grandmother was cooking. My father and mother both have over 10 brothers and sisters, so a big family, you can say, and with that comes a lot of food. So I just found myself in the kitchen quite a bit.
Now, before we left, you said you're taking small steps, organic small steps. When you're launching your first, what is the first thing that you do out of the gate?
Josh, I can assume that if you don't really have anything financially to build off, the only way to go is to just kind of take it and roll with it. So I started off literally by printing out business cards at Bureau en Gros. I'm scared. I'm going to tell everybody my secrets out there.
I think people know that Bureau en Gros does business cards.
Yes, they do.
We won't call it Staples here. Yeah. That's not good.
Sorry.
We'll call it Bureau en Gros.
So it was really just a matter of believing in myself and quietly getting through what I needed to get through, because I was very much swayed in the opposite direction. Nobody wants to see their child, their sister, their best friend, quote unquote, slaving in the kitchen or whatever, but you cannot take somebody away from what they love. So basically, I started off with the business cards. I basically grew the nerve to walk into a couple of offices and offer my services.
Was it difficult to get that first customer?
The first customer, food speaks for itself. So I have to say that part was probably easier than the bank. The banks were not easy. I thankfully, having studied in marketing and having some really good friends in financial advising and whatnot, I was able to put together like a really good business plan, pro forma projections, all the fancy pants paperwork that the banks want to see when they give you money.
But too tough to sell it.
Too tough to sell it. The minute that I had written restaurant on that offer, I think I had gone to my fifth bank and sat in the car, cried my eyes out, going like, why isn't anybody giving me a chance? I don't even want that much money, But
so what finally worked?
Catering. I had to just kind of listen to what the bank people were saying, and they kept on repeating, this year we've had an increase of 40% increase of bankruptcies in Montreal, which PS, is that even shocking to anybody here? Because like, as you were just talking about retail, we have more restaurants per square capita, I think, than New York now. So
it's a lot.
They got to close and other ones open. But anyway, so that year, a few years back, it was even harder for that. So I kind of revised the whole plan, gave up on the restaurant dream to start, and just kind of fine-tuned it to really be corporate catering focused, and it worked.
So was the bank right at the end of the day to go with catering too?
The bank was wrong to not support me as a restaurateur. The BDC ended up doing that. But in terms of catering, I guess, like I said, it was really shocking because when I had approached the banks, even though there was going to be like a teeny weeny little restaurant in my catering, we had a stable income. Between a good amount that shouldn't really have. It should have been like, oh yeah, you guys are doing great. Here, let me help you, push you along the way. And it was a woman under 30, and like. Physically, the lines on the map were like, I wasn't able to go and get some of these loans and bursaries that the province was offering. So it was legit like a matter of meters away from me. So, at the time I kept thinking, if I can get through this with all these challenges that have been thrown my way, then, I felt kind of like I could maybe just kind of do whatever I want to try and do.
You touched upon something quickly, and I'm going to ask maybe a sensitive question, but you'll bear with me. What do you find did you get the reaction you did because you were young and female?
I'd have to say from the bank per se, not necessarily. I would think that yes, for sure, there's definitely a double take sometimes. It's just, to be honest, it can be challenging on a day-to-day. I still have issues.
Do you overcome today because of that?
I don't dwell on it when I'm treated, I don't want to say not as an equal, but there's definitely some unfairness. I had a situation this morning. We don't have to get into that. But yeah, so sometimes it can be a little shocking that you can still be undermined or intimidated, or people can try at least to kind of make you feel like you are not good enough because you're a young lady. Do you have any partners, they'll say? Do they look at you like, really? Yeah, really?
Yeah, exactly. And that's something that you have to overcome. But certainly confidence, if you exude it and you have the right and you have the right product and you have the right service, that, as you said at the outset when you're first selling your right client, will sell itself. More to come. There's some fascinating story. Let's continue after the break.
Kimberly Lalouse, Miss Prêt à Manger, with us this evening on Today's Entrepreneur at 7:30.
For professional advice with a personal touch, consult Fuller Landau, Chartered Professional Accountants and Business Advisors. Click on flmontreal.com.
7:35. Welcome back to Today's Entrepreneur, a program about the entrepreneurial spirit that drives Quebec business. My name is Dan Delmar, along with Fuller Landau's Josh Miller, and our guest is Miss Prêt à Manger, Kimberly Lalouse. And Kimberly, let's talk a bit about marketing. How do you get your brand out there? What kind of marketing techniques have you used since you started?
Well, first you practice your radio voice, and then you get invited to Dan and Josh. I'm kidding. I've been teasing you guys so much on break, but yeah, I can't get over your voices. It's fantastic.
We practice in front of the mirror together.
My radio voice. Sorry. So how did I do the marketing? Basically, it's all about word of mouth. Once again, for lack of a better term, the way that I see it is the food speaks for itself, and I'm not actually a big fan of legitimate advertising per se. Like I'll pick up a fundraiser, for example, and do it for free. visibility due to trade-off of visibility. So it's kind of like a double whammy. You get to do something good for the community or whichever community they're fundraising for, and then provide food and get yourself known. So literally from day one, it was a question of cooking for people, having them taste the food, sending them some samples. That's the kind of marketing technique that I've adopted. And I did the same in fashion for a little while. So I've seen it kind of work across the board. My ex-boss used to spend big dollars on, billboards and magazines and newspapers and whatever. And one day I was just like, how about we send out some product, And it took a little bit longer than expected. And I remember he was very not happy with me. He was a little nervous. And I would go home every night going like, oh my God, can somebody put those damn jeans on? Feel them, touch them, live them. And then it just happened one second and it just started selling. So same for food. Really, it's a question of, sending out a buffet. There's 20 people there. Maybe one of those people needs food on another day.
And, a lot of charity stuff?
The charity stuff is more of more of in terms of marketing budget. So I'll give myself a certain budget a year and case by case decide on how I want to dispense of that budget. Whereas, the free marketing behind word of mouth advertising by ways of people tasting your food.
And it's about community give back is also kind of
community give back is huge for us. I mean, we do a lot of stuff and we don't talk about it very much because we think that's like the coolest way. Yeah. But hopefully we can come back on the show in maybe 6 months time or something thereafter and share with you a big project that we're working on right now.
Awesome. Now, what about, we've been talking at the beginning of the show, we were talking about online, social media, you want to get out. Do you still engage in that? Do you still, I know the food speaks for itself. I get that.
Absolutely.
I'm tasting it.
Absolutely.
But what about the online marketing?
The online marketing kind of just reminds people that you're there. There's definitely a power of seeing visuals on a daily basis. I have to tell you, I might piss off some people out there, but I'm not a fan of paying for online marketing. So and what I mean by that, if I can just expand, is that I don't believe in buying Facebook ads. I don't necessarily believe in paying somebody $500 a month to take some pictures that I've taken and post them in a really smart kind of way. I don't believe in that. I've never done it. I've always done it myself. And I try to have an employee or 2 or 3 that kind of know how to do it too and share with me the same desire to actually share with people what we're up to. We don't make it excessive. We just try and keep it informative. And I'd like to believe that people are not tired of seeing pictures of food or, again, our flyers are to a minimal. I try and keep them engaged. So it's right before lunch or during lunch, I'll post a picture, not in hopes that they'll show up that day on that moment, but just to be yeah, this looks so good. I'm going to eat it now. Don't you want to eat it too? And it's really up to them thereafter, how they want to go about it.
Now, you start with catering. And you said you wanted to open a restaurant. You always wanted to. The natural evolution is to go from catering to restaurant. Well, so what happened there?
Okay, that was very much again an organic growth. So I got myself a job as a head chef of a catering company because I had never really cooked for more than 20 or 30 people. And I don't know if I've told you guys, but I'm not culinary trained. So this was all obviously a big feat for me to 50 people is a lot when you don't really. Now we do 1,500, 2,000, whatever crazy numbers that even at Rogers Cup, but at the time it was 50 people, how? So basically from that job I had been serving not such great quality food to daycares, and the second business that I opened right off the bat was Petite Miss Prêt à Manger, which is currently at capacity until we move somewhere or expand the kitchen, and that is really solely based on feeding children food that's not processed. I've yet to find another caterer who services CPEs with their really small budgets. Daycares, exactly, with food, a morning snack, afternoon snack, and then full meal at noon. So that's what I call my passion project. We don't really make any money with that. It's very near and dear to my heart, and I really hope to expand it. 100% was inspired by Jamie Oliver. Definitely inspired by my little sister, who was going to school in private schools and unable to have a decent fresh meal on a regular basis to keep her sustained throughout the day.
But you still had this love. You wanted to open a restaurant. You came a little bit working there. So continue. Yes, I'm interrupting. That's really
not at all. I just blah blah. So after the Petite Miss Prêt, then came the tennis thing. So that was kind of another expansion of Miss Prêt à Manger that does large sporting events, namely my favorite one, the Rogers Cup. And just to get to your question a little sooner, Miss Prêt en Blurry was not meant to be a restaurant. It was really catering and a takeout spot. And I had a table for like 4 or something, or 2. And I remember thinking, oh, here, I'll invite some of my catering clients to sample new dishes throughout the season, throughout the year, and see if I can show them what it's going to be, whatever. And 2 people came to sit, and then 4 people. And I was like, do you have more seats? Do you have more, and it just literally went from 6 seats to 12, and then we had capacity, and thankfully, not that I wish anybody to go under, but the neighbor next door closed, and there I found my extra 1,500 square feet of space to move into.
Very different running a catering company and opening a licensed restaurant.
Yeah. Very.
What?
Lots of challenges in the
what's
licensed
the first
restaurant.
big step to do with that?
Another business plan, pro forma projections, loan, and all that stuff. But
and
really,
banks and financing
and financing. Yeah, I have to say I've been lucky to have a few non-mentor mentors around at the time to help me kind of go along my path. But again, having worked in them, it wasn't so scary. It was a little bit less scary than for somebody who may have never opened a restaurant and had been in the catering business. Put it this way, Josh, we've been living growing pains since the day that we started. Every year I've opened a new business. So it's been 4 years, 4 companies, and this is year 5. I already have business number 5 in the works. You can only achieve that if you build a team and you build a solid team. So the nature of the restaurant business is a high turnover. The nature of the catering company is less of that. And then when you have your offices and whatnot, you really want to have a stable team, a core team that you can rely on to do, everything that you're doing and then some. So I've only achieved that in the last few months.
So tough to find your team. I mean, how many people are you today?
I've got 28 people, 25 to 28 people full time right now.
How did you find them, and how do you keep that right? How do you get the right fit? How do you keep that culture?
Firstly, you have to be a really good person. You have to.
As you are.
You know what? I'd say that part of it is searching, part of it is luck, and part of it is being able to recognize the right people when you find them, and knowing how to make sure that they're happy, that you have a respectful relationship between, boss and employee, and make sure that your employees respect each other. And it's a never-ending fine-tuning game of making sure that everybody's happy, really.
Now, you started from scratch. You kind of do it all yourself. How in the world are you able to delegate to your team? Do you find it easy to do so? Was it difficult? How were you able to do that?
Well, that's it. You learn how to delegate. There's a certain amount of control that I don't want to say you lose control, but by delegating, you're in essence trusting all these people. So sometimes it can go really poorly by, delegating something to someone that you thought could handle it, and they just, they don't do so good about it. And, then you can delegate something, and then you'd be amazed and surprised at how phenomenally they'll do it. And then that same person might not continue on that path. All I can tell you is that you just have to really be, you have to try, you have to be aware, you have to not use people, let people use their strengths, yeah. and try to eliminate them doing anything that is not something that they love. Something, one of their weaknesses, you just maybe don't have them do that.
Did you find yourself kind of hovering over people at the beginning? Do you let them go? Do you let them? You give them enough rope to kind of hang themselves, or go with it?
I would have to say I was more of a dictator at the beginning, and I'm more of a delegator now. I was maybe a little bit scary the first couple of years, and I apologize to all of those out there that have lived through that. But there's only so much I can say about doing it on your own and really trying super hard to do a really good job and kind of fake it till you make it and keep up this persona of I have a whole company, when really you're, cooking in your house in your underwear, which is not what I just said, but something along those lines.
It's radio, so it's okay.
Anyway, so bottom line, you just get a good team and make sure that you guys all understand each other and communicate well.
All right, we'll talk about HR with Micheline Mayette to Fuller Landau next, Josh. And Kimberly Lalouse with her one piece of advice for today's entrepreneur, also on the way, 7:45.
For professional advice with a personal touch, consult Fuller Landau, Chartered Professional Accountants and Business Advisors. Click on flmontreal.com.
Today's entrepreneur on CJAD 800. Our profile is Kim Lalouse from Miss Prêt, Manger, and we'll also bring in Micheline Mayette. She is an HR specialist with Fuller Landau. Welcome back, Micheline. Hi. So, Josh, human relations, resources.
Human resources. Human resources. Last week on the show, Dan, we had kind of 2015 trends for marketing. Well, there's no doubt, human resources, it changes often. We have a lot of generations. There's no doubt about that. And there's certain aspects that kind of come into the forefront. So we'll turn to Michelin with their many years of experience and ask Michelin, coming to 2015, this new year that's maybe not so new anymore, what do you see as on the forefront of challenges for entrepreneurs? What they should they really become aware of? What should they start handling?
Well, one thing, if they haven't done it yet, is social media, having some kind of policy for employees on social media. It's something we've been talking about for a long time, but I find a lot of companies don't have anything out there yet. For a lot of companies, they just think, okay, we're going to ban social media in the office, and like they just cut off, some of the more popular websites, and they figure they've handled it. But the fact is that, people go on social media outside of office hours too, and that's often when they can get into the most trouble is when they're not at work.
And on their mobile phones.
Yes, definitely, because now people can go, anytime, anywhere on social media. And so people have to be conscious. A lot of people think because I'm posting on my own social media site, I can say whatever I want. But once there's a tie with a certain employer, like if it's known that they work for a certain place and they're expressing certain opinions or certain opinions about their office or their, the company they work for, then they do have to understand there's consequences that could occur with this.
I remember a story way back when at Fuller Landau. There was a guy that posted, "I'm sitting here at my desk, bored, doing nothing." Now, why would you put that on social? It wasn't me. Why would you put that on social media when people are looking? But on the flip side of that coin, with all the social media activity that employers do in their Throwback Thursdays and all the pictures, you also have to be aware of privacy issues and employees that may or may not want their picture on a social media website of the firm.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, if there's companies that do have their own Facebook or LinkedIn page where they're posting pictures, usually just it's more of a courtesy. First of all, you always make sure, the type of pictures you're posting shows your employees in their best light. But also, you should always give them the option if they don't want to be on the site, they can let you know so that you won't post any pictures of them, or that you will retract any pictures that they're unhappy with.
Now, beyond social media, and we know it's a hot topic, and we can probably spend a whole show just on that and all the policy manuals, what else is there? What are some of the challenges that entrepreneurs should look at from a human resource standpoint?
From a more compliance perspective, there's the 1% training law. Every year they're doing their Releve 1 summaries for their payroll for the end of the year. And so, any company that has over $1 million in payroll knows they have to fill out that little number where they say how much they've spent on training and that it has to be at least 1% of their salary mass. So a lot of companies just go and they fill in, the number. They know they've done training throughout the year, so they figure they've reached the 1%. But we all know the government is trying to get more and more money into their coffers. So over the past year, one thing that we noticed was there was more and more audits by Revenue Quebec. They seem to be spending more time looking at the company's documentation when it comes to backing up what they've done in terms of training. So I would just tell companies to make sure that they document everything properly. It's not just a question of counting up the number of hours or dollars. Especially if they do internal training, they really have to document and plan the training and show that they've planned it properly in order for it to be eligible.
Really not difficult to just take the time to do it and document it properly.
Exactly.
Today's Entrepreneur on CJAD 800. We'll have Kimberly Lalouze's one piece of advice for today's entrepreneur. That's next.
For professional advice with a personal touch, consult Fuller Landau, Chartered Professional Accountants and Business Advisors. Click on flmontreal.com.
And we'll have Kimberly Lalouze's one piece of advice for today's entrepreneur in a moment. But first, talking HR issues with Micheline Mayette and things to look forward to, or maybe issues coming up in 2015 when it comes to HR, Micheline?
Well, I think, there's so many things that come out, and we were talking about stores closing and the implications and people wondering. So, even I think communication is probably got to be near the top of the list. You got to always communicate. You got to always keep your people, I guess, on tabs, not maybe with private issues, but certainly keeping them in the loop can't hurt.
No, of course not. Like, definitely communicate. I believe a lot in transparency. A lot of companies say they're transparent, but for me, transparency is sharing, the good, the bad, and the ugly. So I think a lot of companies want to only communicate the good to the employees, but I think when something's not going the way you want it to go, employees can sense it or know it. It makes them more insecure than if you just would speak to them and let them know, this is what's happening. We're not happy with it, but this is what we're doing to correct it. I think that's much more, it gives much more security to a team of employees than just not saying anything at all.
Kim, now that you're not now that you're not delegating and you're kind of involving, now that you're not dictating,
What are you going to say though?
I want to know, do you include, do you tell your team what's going on, and
Absolutely.
and do they have input? How transparent are you?
I am maybe sometimes a little too transparent.
It's radio. It's okay.
Yeah, thanks. I basically, now we have a new system in place, so we'll do more of the manager meeting thing, and then then have the big group meetings and have that trickle down, which has been around for eons, but we didn't really do that before. So it's working out really nicely actually. But I think it's super, super important to let people know when they're not doing what you think, especially when you're somebody like me who has really high expectations, and I always do that whole hand thing, I'm waiting for you up here. Do you want to meet me up here? Or do you want to stay over there? And don't really go down all the way down. I'll just go a little bit down so that they don't feel so bad. But, try and motivate them to try and do their job better and want to do it better.
And Michelin, just quickly, are generational differences still an issue? Is it still on the table?
Well, yes, I would say there's still generational issues. I mean, the workforce still has different generations in it, but I'd say, if you look back at the older generations, they had more, it was more the boss is the boss and they can know what they want to know and they don't have to tell us stuff. It was more accepted. Didn't mean that they didn't want to know what was going on, but maybe they, they didn't request it or demand it as much. Whereas today, people want to know what's happening. It's very important. If they're not communicating, people get frustrated and they're more ready to voice their opinion, also voice their discontent, which I find is also an advantage sometimes, because with previous generations, it would be hard to know if they weren't happy about something because they wouldn't say it, whereas today they're much more vocal if there's something they're unhappy about. So in my opinion, it's actually easier to fix things when people are more vocal.
Managing and communicating with your people, as long as you're talking to them, that's good.
You have to be able to take it also, right? So as a business owner, I find it really ironic how people can have all these demands or dictate, as you say, Josh, or whatever. But if a good boss, a good delegator will be there to listen as much as you will to decide what these people need to do, right? So and it hurts sometimes, for sure. It hurts, but it's good.
Now, as we come to our last few seconds of the show, we'll turn to our guest Kimberly Lalouse of Miss Prêt, Manger, and say, Kim, what would be your one piece of advice to today's entrepreneur?
Oh, a quick shout out to my cute little Lucas and Zevi. Basically, I don't want to say what I would say is get out while you can. No, I'm kidding. You would think everybody would say something along the same lines, which is follow your passions. For me, in my circumstance, I would say if you think that people are going to sway you to not do it, don't talk about it. Go with what you want to do. It's your life. It's your choice. So stick to what you love, and you're going to wake up every day and be super happy that you're doing it.
Awesome. And Dan, the quick takeaway for me is entrepreneurs that realize when it's time to delegate and when it's time to focus on what you do best and let others do what they do best. I think that's key in any entrepreneurial success.
Thank you, Josh. We'll see you back here next Monday night at 7. Thanks to Michelin Mayette, HR specialist at Fuller Landau. 2 Mondays from now. And, of course, Kimberly Lalouse from Miss Prêt à Manger. Thanks very much for coming in, Kimberly.
Thank you, guys. It was so much fun.
CJAD 800, it's 8 o'clock. The Exchange is next.